Disappearance of a Sheboygan woman from Fox Crossing nearly 50 years ago, once again in the spotlight.
And today, investigators are asking for leads and hoping that advances in DNA testing will eventually give the family closure. Bonnie Repinski was last seen on August 12, 1975, and would be 81 years old today. Jason Zimmerman continues to look into details of this cold case. He's live in Fox Crossing with a first alert update. Jason.
Cami, this is a case that investigators say continues to be a mystery. Bonnie Repinski was going through a divorce at the time and had moved in with her sister here in Fox Crossing. And the spot where I'm standing right now at the near the intersection of Interstate 41 and Winchester Road was the last place she was ever seen. According to investigators, Bonnie Repinski and her husband, who was trying to reconcile the relationship, had spent the night bar hopping when an argument started in the car, and Repinski demanded to be let out at what's now a busy intersection in Fox Crossing. She told her husband she was walking back to her sister's place, but was never seen again.
Well, this was a true mystery. It happened back in 1975.
In a social media post, the Sheriff's Department is hoping to refresh people's memories about the disappearance as they seek out new leads.
This is a case that had a lot of local ties, so it doesn't hurt to get word of mouth, some exposure for the case and get people talking. We actually talked to a witness that had never been talked to by law enforcement before this year, and we got some information that was beneficial to us.
Back in 1975, surveillance cameras did not exist, making the investigation tougher by today's standards. However, advances in DNA testing could produce a suspect eventually.
We've worked with a couple private labs, one out of Texas, that have helped us solve some older cases. And you look at things online, there are a ton of cases from 40, 50 years ago that are getting solved. And it just gives us hope that maybe we can get this one solved.
At the time she vanished, Repinski was described as being 5.5 feet tall, 120 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. Investigators say they continue to stay in touch with the family and provide updates. In many cases like this, the husband is considered the most likely suspect, but so far at this point, there's been no evidence linking him to this disappearance. Anyone with information is being asked to contact the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. Reporting live in Fox Crossing, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.